Good morning and welcome to another session of songs and stories about the woods and the out of doors. This morning I'd like to share a story with you that I wrote years ago living over in Brink Hill Road in the old farmhouse outside of Candor, and summer is just beginning. This story I wrote later in the summer when things had really warmed up, a lot more critters flying around, and of course as the summer moves on a lot more critters come around that are kind of annoying, but even like mosquitoes and gnats and flies. But we know even though we might not care for those critters a whole lot, they do play an important role on this planet. They feed birds and insects, amphibians, and all kinds of other critters. But this one particular day I had gone for a walk in the afternoon. It was beautiful outside, but I couldn't enjoy my walk because these gnats, they kept flying around my face and around my head and my ears, and I thought, you know something? I'm going to go home and I'm going to write a story about gnats. And so I did. It's called Squish, Squash, and So Long. And the story goes like this. Once, upon an afternoon, there was a blackberry bush. Sitting on one of the branches was a catbird, pecking at the succulent berries. Flying around that blackberry bush were 3 pesky gnats. They were waiting and looking around for someone to come along so they could pester and drive them to distraction. Well, just by good fortune, a man came walking along. He had been fishing at a pond. He had his tackle box in one hand, he had his fishing pole in the other, and as the man came walking along, the 3 pesky gnats, when they saw him coming, one of the pesky gnats said, "Here comes a human being. Let's go fly in his face, get around his nose and his ears and his mustache and drive him crazy." So the little gnats, they took off. But the man was walking a little bit too fast, so the gnats, no matter how fast they flew, they could not catch up. But they knew if they just kept at it, something might happen. Well, something did happen. A twig caught the man's bootlace, which caused the man to stop to kneel down to retie his shoe. And when he did, that's when the 3 pesky gnats came flying up. They started flying around his ears and around his nose and around his eyes, and one of them landed on the hairs in the man's mustache, and the man was, "Hey, hey, 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 get out of here, beat it, scram, go home, go bother a dog, leave me alone." The man reached down, tried to tie his shoe again. Well, that pesky gnat came right back. This time the little gnat got right there on the hairs of that man's mustache, and then the little gnat began to push the hairs around. The man said, "Hey, get out of there!" Finally, the man, swatted himself in the face. When he looked down, now there was no longer a gnat. There was just a smudge. And the man said, "Here, take that, you gnat." And then he knelt down to try his bootlace again. This time, the second little gnat came up and landed right on the man's forehead. And then the little gnat pushed itself up under the rim of the man's hat. And then it got up under the hairs of the man's head. And then with its 6 tiny little insect's feet and its little wings, the little gnat began to push the hairs around on the man's head. Well, the man was kneeling down trying to get his shoelace tied, and that gnat was up there. Man said, get out of there!" So finally the man was so aggravated, he took his hat off and he swatted himself in the head with his hat, which killed the gnat. But the man hit himself in the head so hard with his own hat that he tumbled over backwards. And when he did, he sat down. But when he sat down on the ground, he sat right down on the hook, his fishing pole. But when he looked at the rim of his hat, there was another smudge. And the man said, "Yeah, so long, gnat." And then he got his cap back on. Now the man got his shoe tied, he picked up his fishing pole and his tackle box, and he started walking back toward his car. The third little gnat, now he was all alone. It wasn't much fun to pester anybody without his friends around. So the little gnat flew as fast as he could. And as the man was walking along, the little gnat flew up and landed on the end of the fishing pole. So as the man was walking along, the little gnat just bounced along. Dee, 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 dee. And when the man got to his car, he opened up his back door, he put his fishing gear on the floor, and then he closed the door, and the little gnat in the meantime flew up and landed on top of the rim of the man's hat. Well, the man didn't realize it, so when the man opened the door and he got in his car and closed the door and he drove home, well, that little gnat was sitting up on top of that cap, just going along for the ride. And when the man got home, he parked his car in the garage and put his fishing gear away, and then he walked inside the house. And right when he was getting ready to hang up his hat, that's when he saw the gnat. And the man said, "Oh, it's you. Now that you're here, I might as well introduce you to the family." So the man took the gnat into the living room, where he introduced the gnat to his wife, his son, his daughter, the dog, the cat, and the lawnmower. And the little gnat lived in that house until he grew up. And on the day that the gnat was going to graduate from high school, the man said, "You know, we should discuss your future." So the man and the gnat went down into the town and went to a little cafe. When they went in, they sat down and they were having some tea. And the man said, "You know, you're very talented. Maybe you should go to New York and study to be an actor and take drama classes. Doesn't that sound exciting?" And the little gnat replied, "Anything you say, Dad." Well, the gnat went off to New York, where it studied theater, and it became a very talented actor, until one day the gnat decided to seek its fortune in Hollywood. So the gnat went all the way out to California, where the gnat became famous for starring in two very popular television series. One was a very old one. It was called Little Gnat on the Prairie. And the other one was a more newer program. It was called SpongeBob SquareNat. And that's the truth. Thanks.